You think she sees visions. I mean, it's not vampires, but it's also not what your average person does. And then the same, whether or not you believe in ghosts, it's paranormal, but not necessarily, depending on your personal views. So they wanted to make sure, since most people who read historicals, the vast majority want just a regular, non-paranormal story, to not oversell that part. So that's the point of feedback your editor gets. Your copy editor will save you from yourself insofar as like plot holes or just inconsistencies with your character. And then they do a grammar check and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. You by chance, like, I don't know, in academics, I don't know, they don't do the same process as like publishing books. Maybe it is. Do you pick the editor by chance? Like, is there like a group of editors?
That's an excellent question. Okay, so what happens, the process is, from the beginning. So I have a manuscript, I have polished it the best of my ability. The next thing I look for is a literary agent, because I can't just send my book to an editor, no matter how much I'm a fangirl of that editor. It's not something that you can do. So you try and find a literary agent, and you send them query letters. You say, hey, I wrote this book, it's about this topic, you should really read it because of this, I think you're awesome because of this, we should get together. And if you get a literary agent to offer representation, then she or he will have the contacts in the industry to know which editors are more likely to be interested in the kind of book you wrote. And then she will send copies of them to those editors. So you pick in the sense that you try and make smart decisions about who you'll send the manuscript to. At a publishing house, there's going to be dozens of editors. You can't send to all of them. You can send to one. So that has to be a wise decision right there. If that person doesn't want it, that's too bad. You can't, like, say, give it to the person sitting to your left. It doesn't work. So from that perspective, you are able to kind of make a targeted choice. But
she basically bargains for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, your literary agent is your best brand evangelist. She definitely markets for you. She goes to them, she says, you're going to love this book. It's the best book I've ever read in my life. You want to give us money in a contract, you really do. And then hopefully they say yes.
Is there like top, I wouldn't say, I'm thinking like a person who's trying to like a scientist publishing a paper. Is there like top publishers?
Absolutely.
Like they have certain impact?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a good question. So we have what's called the Big Six. There are 6 major publishers in the United States. Once upon a time, about 20 years ago, there were tons. Now there are 6. There are lots of small presses. I mean, unknown quantity of small presses. They're all over the place. But if you want to be with the kind of publisher who can get your book everywhere, you've got to go with one of the Big 6. They're in New York City. They're based in New York City. Most, but not all agents, but most of the agents are also in New York City for obvious reasons, so that they can have lunch with and get to know the editors, who wants what and when. But yeah.
But there's no like rating, like impact factor. It's just like some sort of like, okay, you need to go to this. It's like some
well, yes and no. It depends. Each of them have their strengths and their weaknesses. For example, my publisher is Kensington. Kensington does not publish young adult novels. They do not publish children's novels. So, if you want to go with romance, then they do have a strong romance line. If you're wanting to write something else, then they wouldn't be the right choice for you.
Okay, so it's not like okay, I don't know, the New York Press or something is like an impact factor of 5. There's no number. There's no
not like that.
Okay.
There are different lines and things. Like for example, for romance, Harlequin, which probably everybody has heard of, is the #1. They sell the most books. They're printed everywhere. Everybody's heard of a Harlequin book, even if they've never heard of Kensington, or even if they've never heard of any of the other publishers or their alliance. So in that case, like from that perspective, they have a guaranteed readership. People subscribe to the different lines of books. There are people who love the cowboy books, so every month they will get that book. They will buy it. So if you write one, that even if you don't do any of these other things that I was showing you today, you will have people that go and get your book. So from that perspective, they're a great choice if you write serious romance.
So, when Oprah, who I hate, by the way, she actually published a book, not published, but
recommends a book?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do people get to that point? What do they have to do to get to
luck.
that?
A lot of times it's luck. Now she has a history of recommending books. So in her case, she does look for books, and people inundate her with their books. She probably, I can't even begin to guess how many books she gets on a daily basis that show up in trucks under her desk. Who knows? So you can't just randomly send them to people that are famous in the hopes that they will show up on their show. Sometimes some of the best things have happened just by happy accidents. Like I believe Tom Clancy, who wrote a lot of books that later became movies, like The Hunt for Red October and things like that, he became famous when the president at the time, who I believe was Reagan, was getting onto an airplane, had a book in his hands, and the paparazzi, the people with the cameras, said, "What are you reading?" And he held it up.
Oh, wow.
And just from that, the next day, everybody had to go to the bookstore and buy that book. So he's been famous ever since, right? And so, you know, sometimes it's just things like that that you can't make it happen. But if you can interest the person, that goes back to what we were saying earlier about brand evangelism. You want somebody that has a lot of influence saying, oh, you know, I loved such and such book, whether it's on the radio or on a TV show, or maybe it's somebody that, you know, has 10,000 followers on Twitter or whatever the case may be. Sure.
Have you considered writing in Spanish?
I have considered writing in Spanish. The only problem with that is in the US, pretty much exclusively, they print in English because the US has the rights for English, but if you want the book to be published in Spanish, then they usually sell those rights to other countries. So when a book is published, you know, in Latin America, those are the people that get the right to print the book in that language. For example, my publisher sold this book to Russia. So Russia has the right to print this book in Russian, which means my publisher now can't print the book in Russian, even in the United States. They gave up that right because now Russia has it. So.
But you still get royalties from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So, sure.
So if they sell the rights to, let's say, I don't know, Venezuela, and they print it in Spanish there, and then they sell it to the US and then sell it here.
Yeah, but then it would be through a Spanish language publisher. And then just sometimes, so like if you go into Barnes & Noble and you'll see the Spanish language copy of Harry Potter, for example. If you flip it over and see where it's printed, it might have been printed in Spain or it might have been printed in Mexico or something like that. But it's sold here because the US publisher in that case would have given up their right to sell it in that language. Sure.
So is it possible to have the rights to print in Spanish here if you have a translator?
But then you wouldn't be able to sell that right to anyone else.
Okay.
So the problem with that is the US publishers don't have the reach. They can't put the book into all the stores in, say, all of Latin America. So they could, they absolutely could, but then they would be giving up by possibly the ability to sell that book in other Spanish language
So it's
countries.
more profitable to sell it right.
It really is, because what happens if you sell the book to Spain, chances are good it's going to be in other Spanish-speaking countries. You're not just selling to Costa Rica. You're selling to Latin America when you're selling a foreign right. Any other questions?
You ever thought about doing like webinars? Have you ever done that before?
A webinar?
Yeah.
Webinars can be good where people call in and they can see you and they can follow along in the video.
Okay. Or like do a video. I guess it's maybe not webinar or like just a video to promote the book.
Usually live.
Yeah, webinars are usually live and then people can either chat or talk on the phone and conference call in.
A conference call, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was just thinking about this. Somebody who wrote this book and she had a video just talking about the book and whatnot on her website.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was just thinking about is that a good?
Yeah, that's definitely good. Anything you can do that brings buzz, that brings interest to get people to look at the book cover, at you, is definitely a good thing. I've also done chats, sometimes different websites, particularly review sites. People go there looking for a recommendation. They want somebody to tell them what book they should read next. And sometimes those websites will have chat rooms where the author can go in and talk to people and say, hey, you know, and answer questions about the book and those kinds of things. Sure.
The materials that you utilize to, you know, publish your book, do they pay for it or you have to put some of that?
Well, it's a little of both. So these things, I don't pay for at all. These are made by the publisher and they send me a giant stack of them. My websites, that is something that I do myself, which is why sometimes an author won't even have a website because they will have to pay for that themselves or do it themselves, things like that. Bookmarks, it depends. Some publishers make bookmarks for the authors, and some authors do it themselves. Depending on the publisher, even if they make the bookmark, it might not be the way the author wants it to be, and so it still might be a smart idea to do your own and give those out, because then you know what it looks like, what it says, and you have control over where it goes, things like that. Sure.
Have stores put those bookmarks in the books that other people buy, that are other books?
In other books, I don't know the answer to that, but I doubt it. Most likely,